Hi, Thunderwolves. I'm Amanda Hasley, the athletic director here at Niagara County Community College. We're roughly 1 week away from starting our athletic spring 2021 semester here. Couldn't be more excited. Most of our classes started virtually last week, so make sure you're continuing to log in, complete your assignments, because remember, your coaches get your Starfish notifications and they can see how you're performing in the classroom. Classes that were initially scheduled to be in person should be resuming next week on February 1st in person. So make sure you're aware of that as well. Before we do officially begin our practices the week of February 1st, athletic trainer Henry Luzak, who's on the Zoom call with me as well, we wanted to go over some critical information. Please view the entirety of this recording. On your first day of practice, you will be required to sign the documents that we're going to be discussing here. And also at the end of the slide, I will put up my email address as well as Henry's. So if you have any questions for us, you can feel free to reach out. But we do ask that you view the entirety of this recording. So before you sign those documents, you're fully aware of what you're signing. So I'm just going to pull up the screen share real quick. And Henry, you can tell me, can you see that?
Yes, I can.
All right, so for our athletes that were here in the fall, we did do a Thunderwolves Pledge and Code of Conduct. But as we know, with COVID-19, things have changed since the fall. So we wanted to do this again to go over some of the information that you guys will be required to know as you navigate your journey here. All right, so understanding the risk. Even by following all social distancing, mask mandates, testing requirements, and screening policies, that does not mean you cannot contract the COVID-19 virus. By engaging in sport, you subject yourself to possible exposure. So even though everything we're going to go over that you're required to do, even if you do it perfectly, we just want everyone to be aware that does not mean you're invisible to the virus. You can still contract COVID-19. What will be required of you as a student athlete? So first and foremost, screening onto campus. We only have 2 entrances onto campus, both entrances, the north and south end of the Learning Commons. As soon as you come onto campus, you are required to wear a mask. You have to get your temperature taken and answer screening questions. You can log into Banner Web prior to coming onto campus to answer those questions. Again, for those of you that were here in the fall, you realize that that's a much quicker process, and you'll want to make sure you do that ahead of time coming onto campus. You'll receive a sticker when you screen with the date on it that verifies you were screened for that day. Therefore, if you come and go off campus, you can come back on without having to go through the screening process again by showing your sticker. You can still only enter and exit. Well, you can exit through any door, but enter only through the Learning Commons because all other doors are locked from the outside. But you can skip the screening process as long as you show your sticker. This screening process will also be in effect for outdoor practices once those start. You cannot go directly out to the field. You have to come onto campus to get screened first, and your coach will be looking for your screening sticker before you start practice that day. The second requirement you'll have as a student athlete is you have to participate in the weekly surveillance testing in the art gallery. Again, for our students that were here last semester, it's the same swab testing. It's virtually painless. It takes only a couple seconds if there's no line, but that is mandated weekly by SUNY, by NJCAA, and Region 3 to participate in sports. We'd particularly like our athletes to test on Mondays. If you cannot test on Mondays, you do have until Friday. But please be aware, if you do not test by Friday, you will have to cease practice and competition effective immediately until you fulfill your testing requirements. Therefore, if we're into our competitions and you have a game on Saturday, but you didn't test that week, you will not be able to play in that game. So please make sure you're participating in your weekly testing. The only time you'll be exempt from that, and we can go over that in another couple slides, is if you are in a quarantine. You will not be required to come on campus for that testing. But please keep that in mind that you will be required to do that weekly. All of your coaches should be sending you some information very shortly about the hours for testing. But again, if you have any questions, you can come and talk to me about it. The third thing you'll be required to do to be a student athlete is monitor your symptoms. By now, we should be familiar with the COVID-19 symptoms. There's a whole bunch of them: fever, headache, sore throat, runny nose, stomach issues. The list goes on and on. But if you do have any of those symptoms, you do not want to come to practice that day. You may think it's only a cold, you may think it's allergies, you may think it's a sinus headache, and it very well could be. But do not come to practice with those symptoms. Instead, if you have those symptoms, you should contact Henry Luzak, and he can begin triage with you. If it gets to be day 2, over-the-counter medicine's not working, then you might need to go for a COVID test. It gets to be day 2, and your symptoms are gone. It was only, you had a headache, you took some Tylenol, and it's gone. You have no other symptoms. Then it may be okay for you to return to practice. But do not come to practice with any COVID-19 symptoms, because you risk putting your whole team in jeopardy. The fourth thing you're required to do as a student athlete is, if you are exposed to a positive COVID-19 case and you're required to quarantine, you need to adhere to your quarantine restrictions. Quarantine restrictions means you are in your dorm room, your apartment, or your house, wherever you are living, and you're not leaving for any reason. If you are subject to a quarantine, New York State Department of Health, Sherry Yeager from the NJCAA Wellness Center, or Jill Fadul from our housing will go over exactly what that means for you. But you want to make sure you're adhering to all quarantine restrictions. And lastly, the last thing you're required to do as a student athlete is, if you do test positive for COVID-19, you report that to Henry and myself immediately. Henry, anything you want to add to requirements of a student athlete?
Sorry, what was the question?
I said anything you want to add.
Oh, anything I want to add to that? Yes, no, just as long as you make sure that we are all in the loop and know, just don't let coach know and rely on them to let us know. Try to get a hold of us directly as well.
New York State and NJCAA quarantine guidelines. So some of this has changed, so we want to make sure we go over this with you. You are required to quarantine from exposure of a positive case if you were within 6 feet from a positive case for an accumulation of 15 minutes or longer within a 24-hour period. So what that could mean is, if you're in a practice and somebody from your team tests positive, if you were with them at practice for longer than 15 minutes, you will be required to quarantine. Same thing with classes. We saw that a couple times in the fall. If there was a positive in a class and the desks were not 6 feet apart, if it was a lab or something like that, the whole class could be required to quarantine. You will also be required to quarantine if you have exposure to a positive case and you are not wearing your mask, regardless of social distance. So a couple examples of that would be at practice. If you do not have your masks on during practice, which we're not required to do if we're an active participant. However, if somebody in that practice tests positive, the whole team would be required to quarantine. That also applies for anybody in your household. If you live with anybody and they test positive, you're not usually walking around your house with a mask on, so therefore you would be required to quarantine. You will also be required to quarantine if you're notified by the New York State Department of Health or the NJCAA Wellness Coordinator that you were in exposure and you meet those qualifications and you have to quarantine. New York State now requires a 10 to 14-day quarantine. It will be depending on your symptoms. And when you get the notification from either the New York State Department of Health or the NJCAA Wellness Coordinator, they will detail what your quarantine looks like with an end date as well. And if you're in quarantine, but you don't have any symptoms and you know, you're just in quarantine because you were an exposure, you do not need to produce a negative test to return to campus. So that's a little different than the fall. If you're in quarantine, you don't have any symptoms, you can return to campus without producing a negative test.
If you tested positive, however, you still do need a test, a negative test to return to campus.
And we'll go over that on the next slide. Yep.
Yep.
All right, so return to play from testing positive from COVID-19. So if you tested positive since last March at any point for COVID-19, you'll be required to produce a negative result that, you know, you are no longer infected with COVID. You'll also need a note from your primary care physician that you were seen for COVID-19 and are cleared to return to sports. It needs to say both of those things, that you were seen for COVID-19 and that you are cleared to return to sports. I know that some of you, it's not easy to get into your physician. Either, you know, you're out of town, you're an international student, whatever the case may be. If you cannot get to your primary care physician, we will provide a physician appointment for you at no cost to you, but any further testing the physician recommends would be at the cost of the student, and you could not return to sports until that testing is completed. So I'll give you an example. We do have a contract set up right now with UB Orthopedics and a physician there that if you cannot get to your primary care, you can go to this physician to be cleared, but he typically will require additional testing. It could be cardiac clearance, an EKG, whatever he decides. You would have to get those tests done at on your expense before you could return. So the first thing you'd want to do is to get in touch with your primary care physician and hope that you know, you can get your release from them. And then after you got your negative test, your quarantine's completed, you got your note that you can be cleared and you can return to sports, there's still a 4-day gradual return to 100% with our athletic trainer. So on the first day, you'll be able to do 25% of a normal practice. By day 2, you can do 50%. By day 3, 75%. And on the 4th day, return to 100%, pending no issues during your gradual return to play. Henry?
That's exactly correct. We can set that up individually with us. It's just to see if with this disease, there's a lot of unknowns with the cardiac, and what all this policy is for is if further cardiac testing is desired, your doctor or our doctor is going to request it. And once we get all that clearance, this 4-day return to play is to see if each day, just doing a little bit more, how your body responds to that. Kind of like a concussion return to play.
Okay. All right, so as mentioned, you will be getting the Thunderwolves Pledge, your first day of classes that details everything first day of practice, excuse me, that details everything we just went over. You'll be required to sign that before you can participate in practice. If you have any questions between now and then, you can email myself or Henry. Both of our email addresses are up on the screen. And next, we're going to go over the code of conduct, which you'll also have to sign the first day of practice. All right, let me pull that up. All right. All right, Henry, can you see the code of conduct?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to go through this. Again, if you have any questions at the end of this, you can email myself. But once you sign this on your first day of practice, you will be held to these standards. Okay, so number 1, I understand that the college does not provide athletic insurance for any injury I may occur. Therefore, I am covered by either a personal or family health insurance plan. I understand I must be covered by a health insurance plan to participate in NJCAA athletics or sign an assumption of risk agreement. We do not offer health insurance for our student athletes. You have to have your own health insurance and provide a copy of the card to Henry prior to the start of practice. 2, I understand that NCCC Athletics reserves the right to approve, flag, and oversee all student athlete registrations. I give NCCC permission to release and review my transcript, grades, and academic progress to officials determining athletic eligibility and awards. So when you come to college, New York State recognizes you as an adult and you're covered under FERPA laws. So mom, dad, grandma, grandpa can't call up, find out how many classes you're registered for, how you did on your classes, what you got on your midterms, etc. However, as an athlete, I need to be viewing what you're registered for. I need to be reviewing your grades for academic progress. And when you sign this, you're giving NCCC Athletics permission. So it's not just me, it's your coaches as well. So they will be able to see your starfish notifications and how you are doing and performing in the classroom. 3, I understand that I must stay enrolled in at least 12 billable hours during the entire length of my intercollegiate athletic season. If I do not follow the above, I will become immediately ineligible for any and all future NJCAA and NCCC athletic participation. Additionally, my team will be forced to forfeit any games that I participate in while enrolled in less than 12 billable hours. There is an exception to this rule due to COVID-19, and if it's your last season of competition prior to graduation, but I've already gone over that with the people that qualify for that. So everybody else, you have to be enrolled full-time, which is 12 billable hours for the entire duration. You know, in another couple weeks before before withdrawal period's over, if you decide you don't like your math class, so you want to drop it, and now you only have 12 credits, and you played in a game, you would be ineligible. So make sure you do not go below 12 credits. 4, I understand that I will receive 1 physical education credit for my participation in an intercollegiate athletic team for each academic year, maximum of 2. I understand that if I do not satisfy all requirements of my intercollegiate athletic team, I will receive a grade of a U. So all majors at NCCC require 2 credits of physical education. If you compete in 2 seasons of a sport, you will get those 2 PE credits. If you are kicked off the team for any reason, you will receive a U for your physical education credit. 5, as a student athlete, any semester in which I do not pass 12 credits with a 2.0 or higher can jeopardize my eligibility. Anytime I do not pass 12 credit hours with a 2.0 or higher, please see the athletic department to review your eligibility status. That is always the rule of thumb, 12 credits at a 2.0 each full-time semester. Number 6, I understand that NJCAA rules require an automatic 2-game suspension for a violent game ejection and 1-game suspension for a non-violent game ejection. We'll go over what this means. So if you are in a basketball game and you get a yellow card for a non-violent ejection, you gave the finger to a referee. You are going to be eliminated for that game, which means you cannot be in sight and sound. You have to leave the venue, go in the locker room, go home. You can't just take off your jersey and go sit on the bench. You cannot go sit in the stands. You have to be with not in sight or sound. If you get a violent game ejection, you are fighting, whatever the instance may be, you are suspended for that game plus 2 more. 7, I understand that the use of alcohol, tobacco products, vaping, or drugs during any athletic game, practice, travel period during in-season or sponsored event is prohibited. How discipline works here, if I get an incident report with your name on it involving any one of those things I just mentioned, I will automatically suspend you from the team and I will begin an investigation. I will interview everybody that was involved, yourself included. I understand that sometimes you're just in the wrong place, wrong time. Sometimes it's not exactly what it appears to be. I will listen, I will investigate, and at the conclusion of my investigation, I will give the necessary suspension. Sometimes it's 1 game, sometimes it's 2 games. It's always different because no 2 incidents are ever the same, so no 2 suspensions are ever the same. 8, I understand that while as a student athlete, I am a representative of Niagara County Community College in any illegal or unlawful activity I participate in can subject myself to athletic disciplinary actions or dismissal from the team. If you are arrested, you're automatically suspended from the team, and I cannot even begin to reinstate you until all charges are dropped. And sometimes when you get arrested, it takes a couple months to get in front of a judge or appear in court, so you'd be suspended for that whole time. 9, athletics are encouraged to utilize social media in a responsible manner. I'm not allowed to publicly criticize game officials, referees, teammates, coaches, NJCAA athletic staff to the media or through any internet posted. Any items that appear on social media are subject to the NJCAA athletic code of conduct and can result in disciplinary action. So make sure there's nothing on your social media accounts that can get you in trouble. We know Snapchat is not forever. However, there's been many cases where people screenshot or record Snapchats and send it to the athletic department, the housing staff, whatever the case may be. Watch what's on social media. Do not let people take pictures of you that could get you in trouble, especially if you're wearing your NCCC gear. 10, hazing or bullying of any type will not be tolerated. I pretty much have a zero tolerance for that. If you are caught hazing or bullying your teammates, you will be suspended from the team indefinitely. 11, I understand that all apparel equipment issued to student athletes is considered to be property of the athletic department and must be returned at the conclusion of your season. If you do not return anything that's given to you, jerseys, warm-ups, bags, anything you did not buy, if you don't return it at the end of your season, we're going to put a hold on your account for a lot of money, because it's very hard to get those replaced after they're purchased, or until you return our jersey or missing equipment item. Anything you fundraise for or purchase yourself, you're free to keep. 12, I understand that NCCC teams must finish the regular season with a minimum of 500 winning percentage or better to participate in postseason play. Postseason looks a little different this year with COVID-19, so it would just be following whatever postseason rules are in place. But as a rule of thumb, if you don't have a winning percentage of 500 or better, we usually don't send you. We opt out of it. Because it costs a lot of money for postseason, and if you don't have the winning percentage, it's just not worth it. 13, I understand that academically I need to be making significant academic progress in order to participate in postseason play. So what this means is, you registered for classes last week, you have no intention of going to any of your classes, you're just here to play a sport, and you blow off all your classes. If that is the case, you will not go to postseason play. You need to be making significant academic progress in order to participate. So it doesn't mean you're going to class and you're struggling, or you're failing one class but doing great in another. It means you totally just blew off the season. 14, I understand that my participation in any fraction of a single contest constitutes a year of eligibility used. So this is an exception rule because of COVID-19. Due to COVID-19, anybody who participates in a winter, fall, or spring sport will not use a year of eligibility at the NJCAA level. So let's take women's volleyball, for example. You could participate in your season, you could win the regional championship, you could travel to Rochester, Minnesota for the national championship, win a national championship, and this still does not count as a year of NJCAA eligibility. 14, I give NCCC permission to include my information on a roster listed on our website and the NJCAA website. We include your picture, your hometown, your high school, some other statistical information. You're just giving us permission to do that by signing this document. 16, you'll be asked to fill in yes or no if you've ever been convicted of a felony. It does not mean you cannot participate in athletics. It's just a statistic we need to keep for SUNY. 17, in order to participate in NCCC athletics, I must participate in the following mandatory trainings: enough is enough training, sexual harass training, and sensitivity training, and any other trainings deemed necessary by the director of athletics. So most of these trainings you have completed in the fall. A couple other ones we have this week, but if you do not participate in these trainings, you will not be able to compete in practices or competition. 18, due to COVID-19, I must participate in weekly surveillance testing in order to practice or compete. Failure to test will result in further suspension. So we already went over that with the pledge. You have to participate in your weekly testing. 19, I agree that when I applied to Niagara County Community College, I was truthful and listed all colleges I attended either part-time or full-time on my application. And 20, by signing this document on your first day of practice, you understand what the rules and expectations are to be an athlete at NCCC, and you know what the suspensions will be if not followed. So again, you're required to sign this. Let's hope we never have to pull it out during your season. But if you do have any questions, you can feel free to contact me prior to signing. And I think that's it. Henry, anything you want to add?
Nope, that's about it. Contact me with questions.
All right. Well, those were your trainings that you'll be required to sign again on your first day of practice. And other than that, you'll be good to go. Thank you.